Good morning. Welcome to Unique Peace. So nice for all of you to be with me today. My guest, Anzhelika, she's running a little late. She had to run an errand really quickly. She's supposed to be on within the next 10 to 15 minutes, so we will welcome her at that time. I just want to let you know of a few things. We recently updated the Quiet Healer website, so if you want to go ahead and take a look at that and leave your comments and tell me what you think of the new website layout and design. And we also updated the logo, so I'll be excited to share that soon. You can leave your comments on that as well. So today's guest, I'm really excited to have her on. She grew up partially in Russia, and then her family moved to the United States, and I'm interested in hearing her story, and everything that led to that, and how that affected where she is now. So we'll be talking to her then. And so before she comes on, let's do a couple minutes of some meditation. So I'm going to stop my camera, and we're going to breathe in and breathe out gently. So I want you to take it and get comfortably seated. I want you to kind of relax your shoulders, put your feet firmly on the ground if you're sitting on a chair. If you're sitting in the crisscross position on the floor, just make sure you're nice and grounded and your root chakra is meeting the floor comfortably. Round your shoulders back. And then take a deep breath in through your nose. And bring it down into your belly. And exhale. And another one in through the nose. Bring it down into the belly. And exhale. And I'm going to do a nice repetitive chant. It's one of my favorite meditations. And as we do this, you just sit and continue to breathe in through the nose, down into the belly, and exhale. Aviraungan. 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 And when you are ready, you can take and open your eyes, kind of adjust to the room again. Welcome back. That's one of my favorite chants that I've learned over the years as a Reiki master. It's one that always brings me peace, as well as the Reiki precepts in Japanese, the original Japanese, which is also very resonant with me. What I love about the Aviraungan is that it really hits the vibration of all three of the mind, body, and spirit, but also all 7 chakras that are major. And it's that nice vibration internally and externally for me, especially saying it. Welcome, Michael. Thank you. We love you as well. I love you as well. And that's, again, one of the things that brings me peace is chanting, is writing. I love to go for walks, especially in the morning. I love when it's nice out and, not 32 degrees and have to bundle up, but I do. I do bundle up and go for a walk at 5:30 in the morning here on Long Island, but it's better when it's warmer. And I am grateful for for all intents and purposes, my sister-in-law buying me a hat that has a speaker in it so that I don't have to wear my earbuds because that can be a little uncomfortable when walking. So for all of you out there who are tuning in to see Anzhelika, thank you for joining us. We're just waiting for her to come on. It'll be about another 15 minutes, she said. So hopefully she'll be joining us very soon and we can learn about what brings her peace. In the meantime, I'd love to know what brings you guys peace. How do you find peace in the everyday, in the mundane? Like, I'll stop, I'll go to my car, I'll meditate, I'll chant. If it's particularly stressful, I scream in my car. Scream therapy is a wonderful way to release any pent-up anger or frustration and get it all out. And then you feel a lot calmer, at least I do anyway. And it's something that I learned fairly early in my career, my corporate career, is they say, oh, there's no crying in the corporate world. There is, you just can't let people see. So you go to your car during your lunch and you scream it out. You come back and you feel better. The same is true for going for a walk. Even now, people will go walk around the parking lot. People will find the gym. They'll make use of the corporate gym in a nearby office, or, don't be afraid to take your lunch break. More than anything, in the corporate world, it's important to take that break. Having worked on two different facets in the corporate world, in the media and marketing world, which can be very stressful, but also working in HR, I've discovered that there's a reason it's mandatory to take breaks. And as you are climbing the corporate ladder, as they say, and you find yourself from an hourly employee to a salaried employee, salary employees are less likely to take their lunch. They're more likely to eat lunch at their desk and never leave their desk because, it's ingrained that it's not right to do that. You're not supposed to take your lunch. Yeah, you are, and you really should. Because if you don't give yourself that break, whether it's a half an hour or an hour, all that anger and frustration starts to mount. And it could lead to some serious health crises. I'm coming up on 2 years of abruptly leaving I really liked the office that I was at the time. I didn't love the work. Most of us, unless we really love what we do, we find peace in doing the job, but we really love the people. In that whole adage of people don't leave jobs, they leave coworkers, they leave the boss, they leave the manager. That is 100% true. Because I left the job abruptly because of a manager and the person above her. So I was already looking. I was making do. I liked a few people that I was working with. They made the workday better. One of the people who is still at that office is one of my best mentors and good friends. And while the offer has been extended to go back, I won't go back because I want to remain friends with that person outside of the office. So it's very key and very important to know that if you don't take those breaks, the frustration and anger will mount, and you'll become very resentful of those you work with and work for. And you have to understand that not taking those breaks can lead to burnout, and it can also lead to health crises. And I almost experienced that. And as many of you know, I'm a single mom. There's no one else to really take care of my child if I end up in a hospital. And no job is worth going to the hospital for. Not mentally, not physically either, but definitely not because you got burnt out. You couldn't take it anymore. And that's where I was headed. So if you've ever experienced that, part of it could be that you're not taking your breaks that you are entitled to. It's a legality. Having worked in HR, you are legally allowed and required to take a lunch break, whether that's 30 minutes or an hour. Don't skimp that. Don't say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, because we know that's a lie. If you're doing it today, you're most likely doing it tomorrow. And if you're like, well, I can't take a lunch break, it's frowned upon by my boss. Well, A, legally you can take it. Again, I'm going to stress that. And B, then take a 15-minute walk. Go outside, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D, get the frustration out, and walk. A 15, 20-minute walk is good for your health. It clears your mind. It gets the physical frustration out. You're moving some energy. And then you come back and you're refreshed and you get through the rest of the day. And that's important, because if you don't do that, you can end up hurting yourself. You don't think you're hurting yourself, but you are, because you get elevated blood pressure. It manifests in other ways. For me, I had seven UTIs in 4 months. That's a problem. I was almost in the hospital. And I was also feeling like I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, because you go in the rules are constantly changing, or that person can be Jekyll or Hyde. It was like the equivalent of being in an abusive relationship, which I've also been in. So when you have that on every side, something's got to give. And you got to be in tune with your body. And part of being in tune with your body is knowing its limits. Your mental limits as well as your physical limits. Because if you're not in tune with those things, you're not going to find peace in any way. So I went and I did something brave or stupid, depending on how you look at it. A single mom just abruptly quitting her job seems really stupid. Thank you, baby. Thank you, Michael. I'm always here, as am I, for you and everyone listening. And so sometimes the bravest thing to do is the scariest thing to do, taking a leap of faith. And that's what I did. My body, God, the universe, something was telling me, you can't stay here. And what I've also learned in the last 2 years is that while we all have to deal with various different people, I've learned to have better boundaries and set better boundaries. And I have learned the word no. And I've learned how to say it nicely in a corporate fashion. And while it is stressed to us, nobody really wants to say no. You want to excel in your career. And by excelling in your career, that means you have to say yes. No, you don't have to say yes. You can say, okay, both of these projects are really important and both of them have XYZ deadlines. Which is more important? What do you want me to focus on? Because that's showing the boss that, hey, I'm willing to do these projects, but you got to tell me which is more important, which has the stronger, harder deadline, what can be pushed off. And by letting them know that, hey, I have boundaries. I can't do it all. But I'm willing to work on what you want me to accomplish. So do you want me to get the accounting project done and get you all the figures? Or do you want me to run the budget for next month? Which is more important? Or is like, okay, a client moved the deadline up for something they need. All right, so do you want me to drop everything I'm currently working on and do that for that client? Or do you want to give that to someone else? Those are nice ways in the corporate world of saying, I have boundaries. I know my limits. What do you want me to focus on? And a good boss, and I found those over time, will let you know what you need to work on and focus on so you can be your best and that the company can succeed and you can succeed within the company. The same is true on personal levels. So you got to know your limits um, on what's acceptable and not acceptable, and where you stand in all of that. Is this important to me, or is this important to me, or how can I make all this work? And that's where finding peace and being centered, meditating, walking, exercising all comes into play. If you can find time for yourself every day, and that's something that isn't easy for some people, but very necessary for all of us. That's the truth of the matter. It's very necessary for all of us to give ourselves at minimum 30 minutes a day. And whatever you do with that 30 minutes a day is up to you. Whether you meditate, you journal, you exercise, it's up to you. Personally, I've learned that getting up at 5 a.m. puts me ahead in a lot of ways, and it's an adjustment. I've been waking up at 5 a.m. for the last 7 years, and it's personal choice. But when you do it, here's my daily routine. I get up at 5 a.m. I have coffee while I read or journal. Then at 5:30, I go out and if it's nice, I go out and I walk for an hour. Otherwise, I will do some exercises at home, whether that is somatic stretching, working with my weights, or just a nice aerobic exercise routine for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And then I go and I meditate in the shower because it gets my meditation in. And what's great about the water meditation is you can literally imagine all the stress that's stuck from the night before washing down the drain and releasing anything that no longer serves you, so that the day ahead is nicer and you're just mentally prepared for it. So what I've done in that hour, in 30 minutes, that hour and a half already, is mentally prepared myself. I've fed my brain. I've exercised some stuff out. I've taken a chance to meditate. I also meditate throughout the day. Just 5-10 minutes in the car during lunch, or I'll come home and I'll meditate if it's been a really stressful day. And then for that, from 7 to 8, it allows me to prepare for my day, mentally prepare for my day, make a list, say, okay, these are my top 5 things I want to get done today. And it's okay if they don't get done. Always put your most important tasks at the top of the list and say, I got to get those off. Whether that, honestly, the most important task 90% of the time for me is laundry, because there's a lot of it as adults, or taking the time to grow myself, but learn something new. Never stop learning. That's important, because when you stop learning, you stop growing, and when you stop growing, you get stagnant, which stresses people out. It's like, I'm not moving forward, but you're not doing anything to get forward. And the scariest step is the first step. And you just take one step at a time. I have a friend who, once she got going, because it's not easy, but once she got going, she's thriving. And and it's really good to see her thriving. It's good to see her keep on going with everything that's going on in her life. She's got a lot going on. There's some major changes occurring in her life, but she's keeping that momentum. And so I can say I'm proud of her for that. And that means a lot, to have been there from the start and to see it continue. So I'm just going to give her a shout out and let her know I'm proud of her. She knows who she is. And the same is true in personal relationships. There's a lot of changes going on in personal relationships as well as work relationships, and you just have to have the courage to move forward or let go. And when you find yourself at that do I stay or go moment, it's hard. So it's also important that's when I would say meditate. When you find yourself in what feels like a physical tug of war, but it's a mental tug of war, like this or like that? Do I stay in the job? Do I leave the job? Do I stay in the relationship? Do I leave the relationship? Is this worth punishing my child? Did they learn their lesson? You know, that mental tug of war that actually causes a physical reaction. It could be very visceral at times. That's when I would say it's a good moment to meditate, because the answers are within. And when you meditate on those answers, while you may not like the answer that comes, at least you know the answer is real. Because I've learned as a spiritual person and in general, and as a Reiki master and intuitive medium, is the ego will put you in fear, spirit never will. And to differentiate the ego versus your higher self or spirit is, spirit will always be gentle in its answer, even if you don't like the answer. So that's the truth of the matter. So whenever I give what I feel might be challenging news to my client, and deliver it as nicely as possible without saying, oh, that the X, Y, and Z is going to happen, I just ask for words that they will understand. 1 second.
Did I lose you? Do I have you?
Okay. Welcome, Angie.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Unmute your mic.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you. 1 second. Chris? Yeah. I can't hear I can't. How do I? She can hear me, but I can't hear her.
So as Anzhelika is getting all set up, we will continue the discussion of moving forward in making those difficult decisions. 1 second. She's going to try. We're going to try again. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay!
I want to say welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I
I
hear
hate to
myself
put
here.
these on, but
I hear myself echoing on your end.
you make this louder a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you this morning?
It's been a little hectic, but it was okay. I'm used to not sleeping much, so
That's okay. You're a little distorted.
I'm distorted.
Yeah.
Can you help me in any way? I'm asking my husband to help me. Distorted, like the visually?
No, audio.
Is my phone? No, my phone's not on.
Just bear with me.
Microphone. Everything's working on our own.
No worries.
I'm so sorry. Like, does it come in? Like, do I glitch? Is it glitcher kind of?
I'm not really sure. I can hear you, but it sounds like you're talking over the same hand. One second. Oh, okay. Hi, Angie.
Hi. Should I speak louder? Does that help?
No,
No.
you're good. You're good.
Yeah?
We're just working out some technical difficulties.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
That's better. No. Do you have headphones?
Chris, do we have any headphones?
Yeah.
Yes. Try those?
Yes, please.
Can we try those, please?
Yeah.
This is the first
No
time I'm
worries.
trying it this way.
I appreciate it. Just take a moment.
I know I'm a little dark also, but maybe. And I'm sitting in the living room with all the light coming in.
I understand.
So,
No worries. There's just a little bit of echo, and I hear myself. So we're trying to move.
is that okay?
Yep, those are good.
I feel like a doctor now.
That's okay. I hear you clearer, and I don't hear the echo anymore. So that's great.
I can't hear you through these. Wait, hold on. Kindly say something.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yay! Thank you, and thank you everybody who is watching for being patient as we work out our technical difficulties.
Oh, well, we're being filmed, recorded.
It's okay. It's okay. So it's been a bit of a crazy morning for you. So that's all good.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you being on. And so I would like to introduce everyone to Anzhelika goes by Angie. She is originally from Russia. She is here in the States. She used to design handbags, or she currently does the handbags as well as run a nonprofit organization that she started herself, and it raises money for worthy causes such as teen mental health, St. Jude's, money for Ukraine. So we're all welcoming Angie today and saying
Thank
thank
you
you for
so
being
much.
here. Can you tell us a little bit about your story coming from Russia to the States and how that has affected everything thus far?
It's really interesting because I very often talk to my friends about pivots in life. And that's exactly what my life has been. It's just full of pivots, if you will. We immigrated when I was 9 years old, along with my mother, father, grandmother, and my younger sister. We went through a process, the immigration process, where we lived in Austria for a bit, Italy for a nice time, enough to have fallen in love with Italy, and finally made it to the United States. When I was younger, I've always loved creating, if you will, whether it was sketching, whether it was physically creating something with my hands. But I always had this drive, this instinct, the need to be able to express myself in a very creative way. And so when I graduated high school, it was a very natural fit when I got accepted to F.I.T Fashion Institute of Technology, majoring in design. Although I later changed it to fashion buying and merchandising.
Okay.
And I believe that may not have been the best decision. Anybody who's listening, never doubt yourself. No
No.
matter how competitive design major was and the reality of what's out there, right? You have very few designers who really make it big. I should have believed in myself more. And it is because I didn't. It is because I didn't hear the voice within. I didn't want to listen to the voice within. That is the best friend we can possibly have, our greatest guide in life. And my intuition, I feel like many times saved my life. But this was
Yeah.
the one time where I genuinely, perhaps was too young to give my inner voice the respect that it deserved by listening to it. And so I switched to buying and merchandising, which wasn't me at all. Nonetheless, when I graduated, I did work in a buying office. It was called The Forgotten Woman, targeting women who were struggling large sizes. There was not much out there for them, where they can creatively express themselves in a very trendy way. And so this particular brand was able to provide women with that ability. But eventually, and ironically, I ended up working in finance. So life, pivots. 9/11 happened along the
Yeah.
way, tragically. And I lost my husband. And what happens to you in your life is very interesting, because just when you think you've set out a certain path for yourself, it takes you on a whole new journey. And I worked in finance. It's something that I was very good at. I made enough money to keep me happy. But I often felt like something was missing, because creatively I wasn't really expressing myself, pushing myself. I've always been able to think out of the box, but I wasn't able to implement all my ideas, desires, thoughts. After 9/11, I decided that I'm going to stay in finance and see what I can do, test the waters, if you will. And it was interesting because it opens a lot of doors, opportunities. You know, the trajectory of your life happens, and you just have to go with the flow and see where it takes you. It's interesting, I've heard an interview recently with an amazing woman, badass boss, and she talks about the fact that dreams sometimes limit you. And the reason behind that is because you can only dream as far as your imagination takes you, not beyond that. But when something happens to you in your life and puts you on a different trajectory and sets up a new path, new journey, suddenly you're reaching highs you've never even imagined or dreamt of. So I've learned to stay present. I've learned not to philosophize too much about the future, but rather concentrate on what I have right here and now and make the best of what I had, knowing that any day or any moment in life, I've learned that early on, can take me on to put me on a different path. And so that's what had happened. About 8 years after 9/11, I met someone and we had the most incredible baby girl. And when my daughter was born, I felt like it was my personal rebirth. I've often said it was as if she had given life to me. And thus a new journey began for me. Children are our greatest teachers in life, even as small as, little babies, because they open us up.
They do.
And I remember rocking her in my arms and thinking to myself, wow, this is life. I've just participated in the process or in the miracle of creating a life. It doesn't get any better than this. And talk about the trajectory of your life. Had 9/11 not happened, I may not have been where I was. I may have been pursuing my career differently. I may not have had my daughter. So I named my daughter Eliana, which means, and God had answered your prayers. And it just suits her perfectly. I was so inspired by her presence in my life that I started to draw and sketch her face and anything that inspired me in that moment. And eventually I went from sketching her to, sketching anything that's in front of me, just to occupy my time. Because, when you have a baby, you go from burping, cleaning, feeding, and everything else that you do as a young mother to take care of your newborn. And when you find yourself in 4 walls, she was born in November. It was rather cold. My Russian mother said, no, you don't take her outside, wait a little bit. So when you find yourself in 4 walls, feeling very inspired and you don't know what to do with yourself, start writing, start journaling. In my case, I began sketching. And whatever was in front of me is what I had sketched. And at some point, I think because we've done so much travel in the past, we've been welcomed in so many different circles, and having attended so many different events, I've learned early on that women can walk into any place with a beautiful handbag and command the room. And in that moment, they can become anything they want to be, much like a man with a nice watch. But when a woman walks in, that handbag becomes his great talisman.
Yeah.
And so I started to sketch bags. I began with one, something very, very different, using in my mind, made out of the finest skin, and I just began imagining. So I sketched the bag, and I decided to create it, make it. Didn't know the first thing about it, but eventually managed to create a bag, named it after my mother, and gifted my mother with it. My sister loved it so much, she asked me to make her one. Then her friends, then my friends, and before you knew it, I had a line of, luxury exotic skin handbags. Henry Bendel at the time had something called an open sea event, where very talented people from all walks of life would participate in bringing in their creations and hoping a buyer would invite them for a trunk show in the store.
Right.
The line was literally around the circumference of the entire block. People would come as early as 4 or 5 in the morning. So I got in. From the very first try, I got in and got the opportunity to bring my pieces into the store, first as a trunk show. Did very well, which was incredible because it was end of July, beginning of August, where everyone was away. And, if people were to come into the store, mostly tourists, they would probably want to spend, because my collection is very expensive, they'd want to spend that money on a brand they knew and they could relate to.
Right.
But my friends supported me the very first time, and I did well. I did well. I will take the credit for that. And so they brought me back, and they continued bringing me back until they started selling my line in the store, and it was a great accomplishment. I had New York look stores carry my pieces, then I started selling online, then individual boutiques, and I had just had an amazing conversation with Saks Fifth Avenue, who was very interested in my line. But concurrently, I met a publisher from InStyle magazine, and in speaking to him, I became very intrigued with the world that he was a part of. And he invited me to join the team, and I did. I've always taken chances and risks, and once again a pivot. And while working on the side of working with the publisher and his team, I managed to, or he introduced me rather to an amazingly talented editor, and I got an opportunity to start writing as well, writing about my experiences as a mother, as a woman, as a young girl who immigrated here from Russia and was completely obsessed with Debbie Harry at the time. Yeah, so it was an incredible experience. I tried to maintain doing both, trying to help generate revenue for InStyle, do events, work with brands, at the same time continue with my handbag line. But my daughter was getting older, and there were more responsibilities. Excuse me. And I realized I had to give something up.
Yeah.
And so I put my handbags on hold because I had to pursue something and be able to be a mom and a daughter. And there were a few other things that I was responsible for. So the handbags were on hold simply because it was, I wore all hats, and it was something I needed to do
Most
from
women
morning to
do.
night. Yeah.
We do.
Never ending. It's never ending responsibility. It's, you do first you create your line, but it's not that easy because you start to work with tanneries, you choose skins, you choose lining, hardware, which was gold plated, hand carved. You deal with all these people, you run around like a crazy person. You start out obviously with ideas, sketches, you change things,
Yep.
it was a lot. And then you market, you do your own PR, you promote it.
Yeah.
It was just
So you
incredible.
found yourself at a crossroads and you had to make your choice. And it sounds like your choice was to stay within style at that time.
At the time, it made sense. You know, when you start your business, a lot of times you pour into the business, you don't take out of your business.
Yeah.
And so, thus, InStyle seemed like a better opportunity in that moment because it was paying me, and the money that I had made from my handbag line, I was constantly investing back
Into it.
in
Yeah.
my business to create a new line and whatever else was necessary. So working for InStyle was an incredible opportunity, and in doing so, you know, you get invited to a lot of different events, meet people, cultivate relationships, nurture these relationships. It was very, very interesting, and an experience I will never forget. One of the great things that had happened is that I was invited to a women's empowerment event, and I immediately realized that something about myself, which is that I take a contrarian view when it comes to anything that's segregating. And more often than not, women's groups, or back then, it was mostly, you know, women of a certain age, women of a certain race,
Yeah.
women going on certain retreats. And so I often thought to myself, because I'm an immigrant and because my house was always a reflection of the UN, if you will, it would make sense for me to have diversity. That would make sense to me, to bring in various cultures, to bring in backgrounds and ethnicities and learn from one another. And that was just something I was thinking about. And something happened where I got a group of women together to support a publisher that I was working with at the time. He had a winery, and he asked me to bring some of my friends over to learn more about the business and the winery. And so my dear friend Regina Kay and I gathered a wonderful group of women, no more than 30. I rented this cool bus for us, like a Porsche bus or
Like,
something. It wasn't
yeah.
like a school bus or anything. And so we headed to New Jersey, which ended up being a 3-hour ride. And I remember we, just like a school kid on a bus, eventually starts talking with kids sitting next to them because it's a long ride. And at some point, you have to start
Talk.
talking to someone before
Yeah.
you lose your mind. We were losing our minds. And so the best thing that had happened, I think, is a friend of mine who I hold in high regard had gotten up and said, you know, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Asia, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if it's my real name. Because at the age of 5, I was lured away from my home. She comes from South Korea. And kidnapped by a man who brought her to United States. She was adopted by a cult from which, thank God, she managed to escape at the age of 16. When I've heard that story, I was blown away because I knew this woman. I held this woman in high regard, as everyone else did in her community. But here I'm looking at a woman that didn't just survive, she went on to thrive and reinvent herself. And it was mind-blowing to all of us. And a woman next to her started sharing about the fact that she was born in a nightclub. She's a playwright. And all her ideas were inspired based on how she was brought up and the scene that she was always a part of. And one story was more fascinating than the next. And in that moment, I remembered Maya Angelou's quote: "There is really no greater agony than burying a story within us. And it is once we share that story,
Great
we start to
story.
feel liberated."
Yes, I love Maya
And the need
Angelou
was
too.
there. The need was absolutely there. And so something magic happened, magical, if you will. we all got into this beautiful winery, got to experience the crushing and stumping of the grapes inside the barrels, had lots of fun, a very Lucy Atholish type of
Yes,
fun.
yes. That one episode where they're making wine. Yes, I love
Exactly.
that episode.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, shortly after that, we gathered once again in a circle and continued talking and continued sharing our stories. And it was such an eccentric and eclectic group of women. We had Fortune 100 executives. We had a regressional therapist who had been written about as one of the best. We had a producer, a two-time Emmy-winning producer. We had regular housewives who were struggling to put food on the table. So it was a very
It was eclectic and
eccentric group of
diverse.
women,
Yeah, it
but we all
sounds like.
connected in such a beautiful way, as different as we were, all were, because of our diverse background and because of everything we brought to the table in that moment, based on our experiences, based on our stories, and how we chose to show up.
So
That
you have,
evening, I had gotten home and received probably 15, 20 calls of women asking me, when do we get to do this again?
I love that. That
So that's how we
had
birthed Share that night, literally.
shared that, and I want to get into how that helps you um, manifest all these other great things that you were doing, and how that kind of helps you find your peace.
Yes. Well, peace is a very interesting, no, I will say peace is a very powerful word. Very interesting notion, very powerful notion, but very powerful word indeed. How do you define peace? In So if we look at it as a word, in Old Aramaic, the language of ancient Syria, the word is shalom.
Shalom.
In Hebrew, ancient Israel, it is shalom.
Yeah.
And of course, in Arabic, it is salam. And if you think about it, of course, these words from the world's ancient, I believe, Semitic, right? Semitic, it would be in Semitic language. And it's rendered in English as peace. In other words, absence of war. To so many, to all of us really, especially now during such challenging times in the world. And yes, peace means that. And of course, to all of us, it means good health and serenity and happiness and harmony and safety. But, and of course, being free from persecution due to one's nationality or race or ethnicity or sex. I think for me personally, when I speak about peace these days, based on everything I had to overcome, it's more about my inner world. And yes, while it's comfort in knowing you have roof over your head, a loving family, friends, to me, it's so much more. It's living selflessly. It's treating others with respect. It's sharing the extra, the little extra that comes to us with others. And of course, my inner world, self-care, self-love, which I feel like took me a lifetime to learn.
Yeah.
Meditation being very much a part of it. I can't imagine my life without meditation these days. I truly believe I would probably lose my mind.
I
Don't
can
you?
understand. Yes, I
I
totally
mean,
can understand. And meditation is truly important, even if you get, doing meditations with like a walking meditation, or I do meditation when I do laundry, when I'm folding my laundry. So
there you
simple
go.
things.
No, for sure. In many ways, I feel like I find peace when we do our share events. It gives me a sense of satisfaction. I get very nervous because there's a lot of planning that goes into putting our events on. We do the annual lunch gala. But I think once we finally get to a point where we begin, it gives me a sense of peace because in that moment, it's such a collective, powerful event that creates a sense of balance within me. And sometimes you do feel depleted at the end of the day because you put so much of yourself in it or into it. But at the same time, you derive a sense of peace, peace of accomplishment, peace of being in that moment and sharing something so incredibly powerful and much needed and appreciated and inspiring. So to me, it's not just one thing. It represents every aspect of my life.
Want to say hi to Angela, who's joining us, and she said meditation is an amazing way to bring you peace, and I agree with that.
Yes.
So
I mean,
you mentioned,
honestly, even if that means I close my eyes, lie down on a couch, and just try to not think, as difficult as it may be,
yes,
but just the effort. And it becomes the norm. It becomes so much easier. I know it sounds easy because it's very hard to shut down your mind, your brain. But you must. Self-care is the most important thing you can give yourself before you can help anyone else. And as much as I struggle with the word balance, but there's a sense of peace in that as well.
yes.
So, yeah, I would say it's definitely encompasses every aspect of my life.
Yeah, and that's important. And as you are doing the share events, it sounds like that's part of the way you help others find peace, is
Thank
bringing
you for
people
saying that.
together.
I would very much
And
like to hope so. Yeah, it's a beautiful way of putting it for sure. Thank you.
and you know that sometimes it's very stressful to put on events. I used to plan events, and I actually still work as at a racetrack. That's my idea of fun.
Oh,
So
very cool.
Um, but it is very, there are times where our minute by minute can change minute by minute, literally based on the weather. Um, so it can be very stressful. And putting on these charity events and getting things out there and helping people can be very stressful. Putting together an event is stressful. And you've got all sorts of personalities that need to work together to pull this off correctly. So when you find yourself in that kind of stressful situation, what do you have in your toolbox that you can just pull out and say, okay, let's try this, or we all need to calm down, let's do this?
When and forgive me,
Sorry.
when I missed one word.
One word. How do you like what's in the toolbox to help you pull out and say, okay, everybody, let's try this together, or maybe we should calm down, or hey, have you tried doing this? What's in that in Angie's toolbox to say, okay, we need to calm it down a minute.
It's putting on events. For me personally, it's not just putting on an event, it's putting an event for share, for something that I have worked on for the last 6 years. I have poured myself into it. I had given 120% of myself. And it's ironic you should bring this up because I've actually had a faint spell during one of the events because you are under so much stress, and I'm very hard on myself. But there's a lesson in everything, and it's all part of your evolution, and it's all part of the trajectory. We talked about that early on. I think it really comes down to, and I want to say this, I am as flawed as any other person out there. And every day is my mission to evolve.
Yeah.
I think that where I take pride is I really do consider myself to be a decent human being. Someone who really just doesn't want to take up space. I want to be of service. This is how I've always felt. I'm an empath. This is the way I've always been. It's who I am. And I'm learning more every time something happens along the way that affects me or a person next to me. It's important to be true to who you are. And so, how, with regards to helping others find peace, by listening to start with, by doing this, by talking, one human being to another, talking to each other. By forgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. By, allowing people to get inspired, whether it's something creative, artsy, music. I am very susceptible to energy.
Yes.
So
I understand that. Same.
the moment the music enters my space, it changes the energy completely. It affects every single person in that room. And it brings out the best of us. It touches, it moves, it brings some memories to the surface. And usually it's positive ones, even when you feel sad. But it definitely brings a sense of peace. For others, it may be, or coming back to sketching or drawing, but designing, creating a business because you've had these ideas all along, and suddenly you're like, I'm doing this no matter what. Tapping in, compassion, kindness. Again, I've honestly come to believe more than anything, it's about self-care and self-love. Because if those two elements are missing, how do you even begin? You have to start with something. But starting with something means work. Everything is work. It shouldn't frighten you. It shouldn't limit you. We are the most beautiful beings on this earth in that we have the ability to create, procreate. We have the brain power to affect how we choose to live our lives and the choices that we make in our daily life, and how we affect others in doing so. It is a choice that every one of us has, and how we choose to go about it fully depends on you.
I
But we
agree.
do have to do a little bit of work, and at times a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, share. Our mission is to really gather and exchange our personal and professional histories, or as we like to say, her stories, to share, to ask, to answer our hopes, challenges, and wins for all the things she and her. And I feel quite often it defines who we are as women. Pretty much. I mean, I can talk to you about this till morning. But yes, I mean, I think that in choosing my platform, I found my peace. It's
Yeah.
very challenging, and it's far from easy. It's one of the most difficult journeys I've ever embarked on or even thought of. But oh, I'm quite content with where we are today, and how much we've achieved and how many lives we've touched. That makes me feel content, and to me that's peace. You know, one can't expect to be happy all the time. My wonderful mother-in-law, who had recently passed away, she was Alexander's mom, the man who died in 9/11.
Okay.
She would always say to me, Anzhelika, you can't expect to be happy all the time. It's not like you're walking around with like a clown with a smile that's painted on your face. It's unrealistic. She said it like she felt it, like she believed it. No filter. But yeah, she always talked about the fact that it's unrealistic to expect that. And it's also part of your evolution. There's no light without darkness.
There's no light without darkness. And we learn a
And,
lot from that darkness.
and the fact that we all have that light, how we choose to show up for ourselves is completely up to us. And of course, we're affected by all the people, all the actors that join us on our path in life, how they affect us, how we choose for them to affect us. Again, everything in life comes down to joy. This wonderful woman, I believe is, yes, Valeria's interview. She's an amazing blogger, stylist, influencer. Maybe blogger wasn't the right word. So she interviewed this remarkable woman once again who talked about grief. And if anybody who's watching is dealing with that, can maybe possibly relate or take away from this. But it was a very powerful interview, and this woman was asked, you know, there's such great energy about you. You're always with a smile on your face. You're so incredibly accomplished. At what point, you know, you've gone through so much grief, at what point do you get over the grief and continue with your life? And she said, you don't. Grief is this weight that you carry on your shoulders. You never get to take that weight and put it down.
No.
Never. It's always on your shoulders. And then there's additional grief and whatever challenges, turmoil, tragic moments one may experience that you continue carrying on your shoulders. You just develop broader shoulders and bigger biceps.
I love it.
But you don't ever get to put it down. And eventually, in your life, you make a decision, a choice. it really comes down to choice with how you choose to live out the remainder of your life. And there will be moments of joy. It doesn't mean that you're going to get to remove that weight and ever put it down. You're still carrying that. But I thought that the beauty was, and the beauty of what she said was that it's a conscious choice you make, like staying present, like living in this moment right now, right here. There's nothing more beyond that. And whatever happens, she's writing a new book and there's no title to the book as of yet. And it's fascinating because she said, I don't want to, I can't give it a title because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'll know
I
closer
love that.
to, right? Because that trajectory of what happens to you in life can put you on a different path once again. So,
Yes, and as a writer myself, specifically in poetry, I can respect not having a title for the work you're working on because it might be one line in a poem, like Leah Papora. It shouldn't have been beautiful. It's a beautiful collection of poetry, but there's not, because usually it's a title poem that is the title of the collection that's published. There's one line in one poem in that entire collection that the title of her book from that collection came from. And so I can totally respect that. And even when I was working on my thesis, everyone had a title for their thesis. I didn't have a title for my thesis until I had to give it one.
I did.
So I love
And
that
by the
I'm
way,
going to be
what
able
was that
to.
title when you did give it
It's
a title?
Insomnia, called
Oh,
Insomnia. Um, and it's a very cathartic and powerful collection because, again, pulling from life's experience, it pulled from a bunch of my past experiences that has led me to where I'm at. And just that one poem that I mean, it was one of those where I didn't know where it was coming from. It's a short poem. It's 2 stanzas, but it says so much.
that is so
And
beautiful and profound.
yeah, so working on getting that published at some point in time. When the time is right, it will be published. But that's the title of my thesis. So, um, Angie, I'm so grateful for you coming on.
Thank you so
Um,
much for having me. Thank you for your patience in trying to put this together.
oh, I love this conversation, and I would
Thank you
love to
so
have you
much.
on again at some point to discuss more because this is just a small unpacking of what you do and how you bring peace. And so I would love to have you on again if you're willing. And just tell everybody out there that Share is a wonderful organization and they should check it out, share.org. And you have some upcoming events that you'll be raising money for. One of them is awesome. It's for St. Jude. But you also
Correct.
raised money for um, the veterans in teen mental health, and both of us having teenagers, we know how important that is, especially now with social media. We didn't have that growing up. Now it's like
Right.
a problem.
Right.
So
I want to add something. The one thing about St. Jude is that, the emphasis is on children with cancer.
yeah,
And I feel like, especially when it comes to children, I often say this. We, older individuals in life, have learned so much from triumphs and, in some cases, tragedies, challenges. We've managed to pick up here and there, based on our experiences, these tools that then we're able to implement in our lives. This level of wisdom and intelligence that we develop along the way. Children are too young. They haven't lived that life. They haven't lived long enough to be able to take away from that and be able to use that as you continue on your journey and on your path. And so I am always taken and just moved, blown away by their courage, by their bravery, by their intuitive and inherent knowing how to deal with such a complex and scary situation they find themselves in as it applies to cancer.
Yeah.
You know, Michael Strahan's daughter, Isabella Strahan,
Yeah.
crazy about her. I've had a chance to speak with her while preparing a surprise gift for her father on his birthday. And so I've gotten to know her a bit. Not enough, obviously, but enough to have developed enormous respect. And she always came across as someone who's very soft and gentle soul and kind and sweet. But ever since she has been diagnosed and has
Yeah.
been dealing with her personal journey that she's documented and continues to with her vlog on YouTube, and I suggest everyone check out Isabella Strahan's vlog. It's beyond inspiring and informative, and she takes you on a journey in such a organic way that you can't help but become one with her along the way. And the level of respect, admiration, just incredible young woman who had shown me and the world, who is so inspired by everything that she's been able to share with us. The power of a choice when life serves you great surprises, and especially at such a young age, as well as with, you know, intelligence. And I think that if we can't take away from these young kids or children, then there's nothing else that can possibly inspire us anymore. I mean,
Right.
these are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I highly recommend follow her journey, and you can find her on her blog, and you will be just as inspired. And in my case right now, I'm trying to express so much, and I find myself lost for words because of how I am taken by this incredible human who's too young to know any better and managed to do something so great in such a short period of time when she's the one who's dealing with this
Yeah.
situation. So yeah, and I totally believe somebody who's that powerful internally, intuitively, will overcome anything.
Everything. I agree. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And we recommend that everyone go watch it. I'll go and watch it at some point today. And again, thank you for being on. I'm just going to put you in the green room really quickly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for allowing us to work through our technical difficulties and getting Angie on. Again, we'll have her on again in the future. And if you are interested in supporting Share, I suggest you go to share.org. It will be in the comments and in the description. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you and have a peaceful day.